Welcome to the Beyond Bound Coach and AD Professional Development Series, a weekly online professional development for athletic administrators and coaches. Join us as 6 former ADs now employed by Bound and with over 100 years of combined experience discuss topics important and beneficial to ADs and coaches. Join us on this journey of professional growth. We're here to help you take your coaching and athletic administration to the next level and beyond.
Hey, welcome to another edition of Beyond Bound, where we dive into the topics of leadership, innovation, and your personal growth as a coach and athletic director. I'm your host today, Scott Garvis, and today we're exploring the dynamic world of athletic leadership. Whether it's guiding a coach or navigating challenges off the field, the role of an athletic director requires a unique blend of vision, strategy, and resilience. Today, we uncover insights and wisdom from our Beyond Bound team and leading the charge in this world of high school athletic administration. Thanks for being with us, guys.
Love being on. Thanks, Scott.
You know, we continue to talk about how, as athletic directors, we get better. And I thought, God, what a great opportunity. You know, when we can, we talk about what we're about, providing professional development to ADs, topics that matters to ADs, a platform where ADs and coaches and educators can share that experience. Can't think of a better group of people to be asking leadership questions to than this group right here. So I appreciate what you guys do. And today my thought there's always tough questions. There's always things as athletic directors that we think about. And so today, what I thought we'd do is we just go through some questions that are, really pressing on athletic directors each and every day. And I'm going to start off with asking this first question about balance to Mark and Todd. And Mark, we'll kick it off with you. But how do you balance the demands of managing the day-to-day operations of your athletic department, but while also fostering that culture of long-term growth and development within your athletic department, knowing that you're going to still have all that day-to-day stuff each and every day?
Yeah, that's quite a balancing act. Of course, thank you, Scott, for giving me the difficult question to start out with. But it is a balancing act. I always tried to, when I was coaching, have this mindset of I have one eye on today and one eye on tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so it was a mindset more than anything that, yeah, we're developing our athletes for today, but I'm also developing the program, say basketball or whatever sport it may be. I'm developing that not just for today's game or today's practice, but for tomorrow's and next year and 5 years down the road. So you're working with those younger kids, or in the case of as an athletic director, you're working with your younger coaches to develop that long-term outlook on their position in your organization. But yet you got to do the day-to-day stuff. And so you got to set aside a time. Perhaps it's first thing in the morning if your schedule allows. Let's get that paperwork portion completed so you have maybe the remaining part of the day to work on that growth, to meet with coaches, to talk about philosophy, those types of things. So I think it's just the way I looked at life, of one eye on today's tasks and one eye on tomorrow's projects and growth.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Mark. I like that thought of the one eye on today and one eye on tomorrow, because we all know that there's going to be things that pop up. And Mark, I think you make an interesting point, or a really good point, is that just that management of your time and being intentional with that time, and how important that is. I think back to, all these times when we're dealing with different issues, and man, if I didn't have that time set aside to, do one-on-one, meetings with coaches or have student athletic advisory council, I struggled to do it. So thanks for sharing that. Todd, how about you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And
Mark that's a great point. I think, man, number one, the first thing that comes to mind is, it's kind of like our motto, our vision here at Bound is we want to help ADs be able to lead more and manage less. Well, management is part of the job, obviously. And we do want to take some of that stuff away. But I do believe, and I've said it before probably on here, is that how we manage the things that we have to manage is a sign of leadership.
Yeah.
And it is a example to the coaches. And, I don't know that you can really have a plan for this, the day-to-day and then the vision. Man, you just got to work your tail off, and it's organization. I do think another thing that we need to really be cognizant of is being able to delegate. And the people that you can trust to do things, you just don't turn it over to them. I mean, it takes a little time sometimes in the beginning to train somebody how to do something. But I think if we take the time to teach them how we would like to see that done, but then give them the autonomy to get it done the way they can use their strengths, the organization is better off in the end. And we've all seen so many leaders, whether they be coaches, whether they be athletic directors, that have tried to do too much, and then there's burnout. So we really, man, get some trusted people around you, train them up. I think the greatest thing that we can have happen is to have people leave our organization and go lead other organizations. I think that's a compliment. I think it's a compliment to the leadership that we're having people help us do those day-to-day things. I always tried to take those young coaches and get them involved in game management, and we all did that, but we're training up the next generation of leaders, and not just for our own benefit, because they do help us, but they can go out and run their own programs. And so that's probably the biggest thing to me, I guess, if it comes down to it, is just having the courage to delegate. And sometimes that takes courage.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love that. And you talked about, Todd, too. I think it was a great point, the delegation, but then the leadership to actually teach them how to do it before you let them go, and give them, you talked about that autonomy to do it the way they need to do it and utilize their strengths. That's a great point. So that brings us into question 2 and tough decisions. We all know that ADs and coaches have tough decisions to make each and every day. So, Aaron, effective leadership often involves making tough decisions. Can you share an example of a challenging situation you faced either as a coach or an AD, and what was your leadership approach, and how did it guide you through it?
I'm going to talk about a specific situation, that I've come across, but it's going to be more of a general terms because I went through this with several coaches over time. So the situation is this: you've got a coach who's trying to grow and develop, but isn't necessarily seeing a lot of its success. And so I'll speak to specific ones. I've got a coach was working hard, interested in being a great head coach, wasn't all the way there yet. Had some growth to do. Had some areas like relationship building was really strong, but X's and O's and season planning and being that really technical coach was still a growth area for him. And I knew that when I hired them. I hired them as a relationship person because the program needed a relationship builder first and foremost to fix a culture builder, and then we'll work on the X and O part. Well, but that was taking longer, and the parents were getting upset and getting frustrated and wanting a change. So my leadership principle here is, and my philosophy, belief is that if educational athletics and activities as a platform to build leadership and leadership capacity in others to help them become the best version of themselves. That's kind of the reiteration of what my vision and philosophy and what educational athletics is about. That doesn't just apply to student athletes. That applies to parents, and it applies to coaches in my lens as an AD. And so if I've got a coach willing to keep growing and building and getting better, and I believe in the process and the journey, then I need to stick with coaches if they aren't hurting kids and giving them the opportunity to grow and develop as well. Even if I've got impatient people on the other side that they want to go from A to Z, and I got a coach who's working to get to Z, but they're on L right now. You know what I'm saying? And so so now you got to have those conversations and massage those situations and say, look, we're growing and we're getting better. Until you get to a point where there's a point of diminishing returns. But I guess those are hard decisions to have and manage with all the stakeholders. When you have growth going on, but other stakeholders are getting impatient. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so I think my common core through that whole thing was always, if I believe educational athletics builds leadership capacity and help build the best versions of people by their experiences and journeys through it, then I have to stick to that with all stakeholder groups all the time, and have the tough conversations that keep us going that way. So there's my thought on that one.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Aaron. I love that fact that you go back. I think that's important for us to remember. Always go back to what's your mission, vision, philosophy, core values. What do you believe in to make those decisions? That was great. Thank you for sharing that. Brian, how about you?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the things when I first was reading the question real quick, I just want to add, and it doesn't really have to do with actually making that final decision, but I think being present is really important for this. And so I just wrote a note real quick. Be present when your teams are losing, and be in control of yourself and your emotions and who you are as a person in a school. And I think that's a big part of what I'm going to get into here, because everybody sees this is who we are. This is what we're going to do. Now, when it comes to actually making some tough decisions, they've already seen you. I mean, I think the better way to look at that is the boss that sits in his corner office and then just randomly gets rid of an employee and nobody even sees that person there. Does that make sense how I'm kind of adding that? So I think it's first very important that you're visible. You're visible to your people, to your coaches. And I always felt I can't ever ask my coach to do something I wouldn't do or I can't do. So if you're going to be there, I'm going to try and be there too. Now, I know it's not always possible, but I'm going to be at activities, that type of stuff. I'm going to go to the line that all of you have used. And I know you've seen what you accept is who you are, right? And so when it comes to tough decisions, I think that's one of the things for me. And I had I had multiple specific situations come to mind, but I have one come to mind. And I think I was witnessing a coach that was struggling. And I checked the data too. I wasn't just using my emotion. I'm a competitive human being. I love watching our teams win too. So I wasn't just using emotion. Numbers are dropping. Kids are saying things that I don't appreciate. We've had multiple types of officials and student interactions with this one team. I think the first thing, you want to try and work with them. Okay. We work in public schools. We work in high schools. Try and work with them. That's what we ask our coaches to do with their kids. But give them specific things to work on. Don't just go, we gotta be tougher, or we've got to be faster, or give them specific things. And there's all kinds of great ideas out there. And I bet that this group could come up with a whole bunch of them, but this part's really key. This situation, the general public wasn't seeing what I was seeing, but what I accept is who we are, right? So everybody maybe saw this, but I knew what I was seeing. I had checked the data. I had worked with this individual. We're trying very hard to keep pushing it forward, and tried to give him specifics to work on. At a certain point, you just have to get off the bus. Mm-hmm. It's hurting our bus. It's hurting the culture. The last thing I'll add, all of those tough decisions, conversations need to happen behind closed doors. Yeah. Don't go and chit chat with the bank teller and be like, well, so-and-so that's a cancer to your school district. It's a cancer to everything going on around. Do it all behind the scenes. Continue to protect that coach in other ways. But try and work with them, and then tell them, hey, sorry, this isn't working. I want it to. You want it to. It's not, and so and using all those data points, that's how you do that. And that's what I would, that was a very tough decision for me, for sure. Challenging situation.
Yeah. And you talked about two things in there, Brian, that really come to my mind when you talk through situations like that. It's make sure you have a growth plan for those coaches so you can get better. And Aaron mentioned it too. And then how important it is as ADs that we lead professional development for our coaches outside of the X's and O's. And in Aaron's specific case, it was about the X's and O's. But we all know as ADs and coaches, that relationship piece is really what coaching is all about. So Thank you for sharing that.
Yep.
Last question. Joey, we got you on the spot, but how do you cultivate a sense of unity and cohesion among your staff, your coaches, your athletes to drive, that shared vision, those shared goals and success?
Yeah, great question. I want to go back just a second, if I can, to Aaron and you talking about going back and looking at your vision and your mission. Sounds a lot like I took that picture that says, look behind you.
Yeah.
Got to look back. We tie things in. I mean, they all come back around eventually. And that's great. Just that other way to look at it. Look behind you. And in this case, with developing that sense of unity, you need to look forward. Yeah. How do we look forward? How do we develop those shared goals? And how are we going to achieve that success? And two, what does success look like to us as a program? How do we define success? Do we define it as X's and O's? Well, or wins and losses? If we do, then we've lost already.
Yeah.
Because, over time, law of averages, you're going to lose half your games. So, if winning is life and death, you're going to be dead a lot. So you've got to develop that definition of success. And how do you do that? You have to work with your coaches and with your athletes to define those goals. What are our goals? What is our mission? What is our vision? So working with your coaches, developing that, like you mentioned, that student advisory council or the captain's council or whatever you title that, but you have to work with them. And I don't remember who said it, whether it was Todd or Mark, but the difference between managing and leading. We spend all our time managing. Well, if I don't manage, I'm never going to get to lead. So you have to do that. Yeah. So you have to have that aspect of your job, but leading, this is where the leading comes in, is developing that mission, that vision, those shared goals, those shared successes. And once they're shared and you give them that ownership, they naturally will gravitate toward moving in the same direction with you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Joey, thank you for sharing that. There's no doubt. I said it. I was up in, got to speak at the Iowa AD conference and got to be up in Minnesota. And I tell people all the time, the two best things I ever did was started a student athletic advisory council and worked with our leaders and did professional development with our coaching staff. Two of the best things I ever did as an AD, because it truly helped define that culture, Joey, that you talked about, and how important that was in bringing everybody together and having that shared sense of unity and commitment to one another. And then you brought up another great point, Joey, is that ownership. That everybody feels like they're a part of that shared vision and mission and core values. So great points. And now we'll turn it over to Mr. Stecker.
Boy, I don't know how I got the short straw and had to answer two questions, but that's all right. I guess it's good because this is one I like.
Unfortunately, it was just the way you were on the screen.
Perfect. We should just make life decisions that way. Just be one big Google Meet, and then we just look at who's on the screen, and that's how we do things.
That's awesome.
So no, but I love this topic, and I love what Joey talked about, and I'll touch on that just a little bit. The student leadership piece, I think, from the student thing, developing a student activities council, student leadership council, or whatever, because that gives you and your coaching staff an opportunity to share the bigger picture with your student athletes that maybe you don't always take time or they don't hear in practice. We get into practice, we put our blinders on and let's focus on the game plan and the fundamental drills and all that stuff. And we don't do enough talking with the bigger picture stuff with our kids. And I think the student activity council or leadership councils, however you title those and use those in your school, gives you an opportunity to share with your kids, your student athletes, the bigger picture and take those blinders a little wider for them. So appreciate that with Joey talking about that. Real quick, from a coaching standpoint, I got asked a lot, especially when I stepped away here in this last year or so. How is it that Kennedy seemed to be able to be competitive more often than not in things over time? We weren't always good, that we had some dips and things like that, but overall, we're relatively competitive. We're in the mix and things. And I say first and foremost, that had way more to do with the coaches and the work they did than anything I was doing. Other than I think we just kept trying to build culture. And we had this continuity of culture. We had coaches who worked together, believed in one another, and therefore wanted to stay at Kennedy. And so the longer they were here, the more that culture continued, season after season, year after year, and the same conversations kept happening. We had this continuity of culture. I actually heard Jay Wright talking about last night as we were watching basketball games and stuff. He talked about, man, if you can get a coach who can stay in a program, more than 3 or 4 years, and they're building the right culture, then that's when you see that sustained success. So that happened with our coaches quite a bit. And I think a lot of that is just giving them time to talk and learn about one another and learn from one another. The more they understand that, hey, I may not understand bowling, but I listened to that bowling coach talking in a meeting, or I was in a conversation in a coaching staff professional development with that bowling coach, and man, they get it. And I learn from them. And the more they believe that in one another, the more they work together. And the last thing I'll say on the culture piece is this. And Scott, you talk about this all the time. We've all talked about this a lot of times. This is a big Todd Gordon thing too, I know. And I've heard Mark say it. I've heard Joey say it. Tell your story.
Yep.
When you are around your parents, they need to hear your story, hear your culture, hear your philosophy, hear your beliefs, your vision, mission, whatever you want to call it. Never miss an opportunity to make sure that they understand your bigger picture as an athletic administrator or as a coach for your program. They might want to be over here talking about this, and that's fine. Listen, be empathetic, but always make sure they understand when that conversation is done, the bigger picture, because most of them will come to you with the blinders on, their situation, their conversation they just had in the stands, and never miss an opportunity to pull those blinders back a little bit and help them see a bigger picture. And the more you do that, the more your story gets shared from parent to parent, from family to family. And now you get that continuity. It's like, I don't know how many times I heard over the years, you can go talk. Somebody told me I can come talk to you about this, but they said, don't waste your time because this is what Stecker believes and you're not going to change his mind. Perfect. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So anyway, those are the things I'd share on that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Again, thank you to all of you, Mark and Todd, with our balance discussion, just you, both of you mentioning that delegation, that training, being intentional with your time. And then as we talk about that decision-making process, I always think back to Brent Butcher always talks about swallowing the frog, and don't let that issue or problem get too big that you can't swallow that frog, because there's so many times as athletic directors, as coaches, we see a problem and we kind of see it kind of bubbling and we're like, maybe if I leave it alone, it'll go away. And we all know that those problems continue to fester and grow. And Aaron Stecker and I actually wrote an article on that. And it'll actually be out in the IAM magazine this spring. So I'm looking forward to see that. And then lastly, we talk about that culture and how important it is to build our culture. And Aaron, to your point, sharing that vision, sharing our mission, our core values, and always taking the time to tell that story. So thank you to our Bound team today. I appreciate you. Appreciate everything that you're doing for athletic directors. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Beyond Bound. We hope you found some valuable insights into athletic leadership. Join us next week for more thought-provoking discussions on leadership and growth for you as a coach and an AD. Until next time, remember, the journey to greatness knows no bounds.